to another Smart Silver Stacker live stream. So, not that much going on really in the gold and silver market over the past several days, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot going on in the world. In fact, there is a lot going on. There are a number of major developments that we need to go over, and this is all ultimately related to the gold and silver markets because many of these developments threaten to plunge the world economy into a very dire situation indeed. Now, just starting off, we'll take a look at the price of the precious metals. You can see gold 1950, silver 2364. Not a lot going on there, the metals have been kind of range bound, and they seem to be primarily focused on what the Federal Reserve is going to do next. That dynamic has not changed. But meanwhile, the world is really going to hell in a handbasket. And I see some folks popping up in the chat there. If you are joining, thank you very much. Got a lot to cover today, so bear with me, but it is all very pertinent information. And, there are some signs I think that the stackers among us are paying attention. And we're going to go over that as well in today's episode. And if you are popping into the chat there, please do smash that like button, help get this information out into the algorithm. And let's get into some of these headlines. I've got several headlines queued up for you today that I want to go over. The first one, you've probably seen this. I mean, this seems to be one of the things that is dominating the news cycle at the moment. And in this case, I will say, rightfully so. This is pretty important. This is this dam, the Kakova Dam in Ukraine, which has been detonated. It has been blown up, or it has been destroyed somehow. There seems to be a lot of controversy as to what exactly happened regarding this dam. Did the Ukrainians blow it up? Did the Russians blow it up? A lot of finger pointing back and forth from both sides. Impossible to know who is actually behind this, of course, until, the investigations and all of that goes and is completed, but probably we will never know definitively. This reminds me of the Nord Stream pipeline, which was destroyed. All this finger pointing back and forth. And, if you believe Seymour Hersh, award-winning journalist, that was Creepy Joe himself who ordered that. But who knows, right? I mean, it could be any which way. But, the important thing here, it's not that, maybe the Ukrainians did this or maybe the Russians did this. The important thing is that this conflict is devolving. Alien spacecraft blew it up. That's Dark Knight Cowboy in the chat. Yeah, well, we're going to talk briefly about this story regarding alien spaceships. I'll probably save that for the end here before we wrap things up. But yeah, I mean, who knows who did it? But the key takeaway here is that this conflict is not going anywhere. It is escalating in a very big way, and we need to be getting prepared because this conflict, it's in its 18th month now, I think, and very likely this is going to be going on for years to come. And that means we're going to be, as Americans, assuming you're in the U.S., as I am while you're watching this, we're going to be contributing a lot of funding to this conflict to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. And, the debt ceiling was just suspended, so very likely we're going to be borrowing all of that money. So this is a critical development. Now, some folks were saying that this is the Russians doing this to thwart the Ukrainian counteroffensive, which is supposed to be kicking off right now. According to Shoigu here, the Russian defense minister, that counteroffensive has already been thwarted. They've blown up some tanks, some armored vehicles of the Ukrainians heading towards the Russian border. But again, very unlikely that if there is a counteroffensive, it has already been thwarted. And again, the fog of war is so thick here, there's really no way to know exactly what is going on. But it is clear from these headlines and, from what we can observe here, just from the open source intelligence that us peons like me have access to, that the conflict is not going to be resolved anytime soon. And it's going to be very costly. War is one of the most inflationary things you can engage in as a nation. And I think it's very clear at this point that this is a proxy conflict between the U.S., between NATO, and Russia. It is not a regional conflict. This thing is a lot bigger than we are being told. And eventually, the way things are going, I would not be surprised if this devolves into open conflict between NATO and Russia. And, it's very likely that this thing could end up going nuclear. I mean, the Ukrainians are talking about riding into Red Square now in a tank. And the idea that the Russians, assuming NATO is capable of defeating the Russian military, and again, I'm trying to be objective here, I'm not picking sides, but the idea that they would somehow lose a conventional war without using their massive nuclear arsenal is crazy. And I've talked before about how the effect of, say, even just a small scale tactical nuclear weapon being used is going to be an absolute bombshell, no pun intended, for the global economy. The battlefield utility of one of these weapons being used would pale in comparison to the economic knock on effects. Right now, gold range bound. This is a headline from CNBC. Traders are hunkering down for Fed cues. And so, I find this interesting that traders and gold investors, investors in general, they seem to just be obsessed with everything that comes out of the mouth of central bankers. What are the central bankers going to do next? This is the CME FedWatch tool, and this tells us that still markets are pricing in about a 65.5% chance of a Fed pause at the next FOMC meeting this month. Now, whether the Fed pauses, whether they hike another 25 basis points in the face of the devolving geopolitical situation, I think is somewhat irrelevant. Now, I'm going to go to the chat here real quick. Is 20x face for 90% silver dimes a good deal? Someone's asking that in the chat. Yeah, I think so. It seems like the going price for junk silver from the big online dealers right now is somewhere in the range of 23 to 25 times face. And, that's a sign to me, the premiums on this stuff, the junk silver, this is like the survivalist silver. This is the prepper silver because it's well recognized. It's 90%. It's well suited to circulation. And one of the things that the premiums on this indicate to me is that at least the prepping element, the prepper stackers among us, and I would count myself in that group, are paying attention. They're bidding up the price of the junk silver because they understand that if this conflict expands, if it really blows up, if a tactical nuke goes off or China rolls into Taiwan or any number of these hotspots around the world blow up and this conflict really drags the US in a big way, it is going to have an incredibly deleterious effect on the purchasing power of the US dollar. Now, we talk about de-dollarization on this channel a lot, and so far, de-dollarization has been kind of a slow death by 1,000 cuts for the dollar. And, that's probably going to be the story moving forward. I don't think that the dollar is going away anytime soon. I think it's just going to kind of continue to lose market share, continue to lose purchasing power. But that will change very rapidly if this conflict escalates. Now, I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom on this channel, but this is something that we need to pay attention to. And certainly it's not guaranteed. I mean, this is not something that's going to happen tomorrow, although it could. But the thing is that when you look at all these developments around the world in the geopolitical arena, it's a powder keg and it is being set up for an event. We are one mistake away, one Brinksmanship mistake or accident or miscalculation away from a much broader conflict and a serious problem for the US dollar. Doom and gloom, I'm unsubbing. Constitutional Stacker says, yeah, hey, Constitutional Stacker. I see a few people in the chat saying, finally catching a live stream. Yeah, well, this is a little bit of a different time. Usually I do these a little earlier in the day, but if you are new to these live streams, I appreciate you joining. Please do smash that like button and, click that bell notification icon so you don't miss them in the future. Going real quick here, SD Bullion, channel sponsor. Check them out with the link down in the description. They've got some cool sales right now. They've got these 10-ounce silver Britannia bars. I think they have RCM bars on sale, these 100-ounce RCM bars. Maybe they sold out. Oh, no, here we go. This is their flash sale. Yeah, this is a pretty solid deal on silver bars. So if you're looking to get some more, hard assets, some stuff outside of the financial system, some stuff that, won't be destroyed if China decides to, say, sell all of their U.S. treasuries. Silver is not going anywhere. It's held its value for thousands of years, very likely will continue to do so. Not a bad opportunity to pick some of that up. So check that out with the link down in the description. This is another alarming story. This video released, it's a close call in the Taiwan Strait with a Chinese destroyer. So basically, this Chinese destroyer cuts off a U.S. naval vessel. And, you know, if you're familiar with boating at all, this is a very dangerous maneuver to cut across the path of another ship, even in a recreational setting. This is a big no-no, but certainly in a military setting, very dangerous, very reckless on the part of the Chinese destroyer, if you ask me. But you know, we're also sailing around over there in the South China Sea, and they don't like that because to them, Taiwan is part of their territory. You know, they want to take that back. And, you know, how would we feel if Chinese destroyers were sailing around off the U.S. coast? So, you know, you can look at that from both perspectives. You can be objective about this. And I think it's important to look at these things from an objective point of view because, buying into the biased narrative one way or the other doesn't really do you any good. But when you look at things objectively, I think it helps you to analyze what could actually happen moving forward. And, it could get pretty ugly if, say, a U.S. and Chinese ship in the Taiwan Strait come to blows, you know, or if someone gets sunk, or if a miscalculation gets made, you know, you might see some anti-ship missiles fired by the Chinese and some U.S. Shipping losses, and then, you know, it's World War III. So it's really going to be a big problem if a miscalculation is made. I don't think at this point either side really wants a conflict, but they have a hard time backing down, and they both want different things here. This is a headline regarding China's defense minister Li Shangfu, who says war with U.S. would be an unbearable disaster. And I agree with that. Yeah, if China and the U.S. go to war, folks, it's going to get ugly real quick. And so, you know, the big takeaway here is we all need to be getting prepared. You know, if you don't have some hard assets outside of the banking system, if you don't have some hard assets that can't be destroyed via this fifth generational economic warfare, then it's time to do that. You know, whether that be junk silver or silver bars, or, you know, maybe you get some gold back so you can take that down to the post SHTF, Mad Max barter town. I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek there, but honestly, something like this could really be of benefit to you should the dollar come under some kind of an attack. And that could just be cyber warfare, right? I mean, we've heard a lot about the potential for cyber warfare in a coming conflict with China. They've put a lot of resources into that, as has Russia. Now, the U.S. also, I mean, we've got a lot of resources going into cyber warfare, but that's not going to do you a lot of good if one day you wake up and you can't access your bank account or your, online brokerage account, right? And Constitutional Stacker, they're saying, please smash that like button. Yeah, please do. I think that these doom and gloom type videos maybe have a slightly smaller audience than some of the pure stacking videos I do. So I will try to get back to those and, put some more of those out. We did a video on, I think it was Sunday or Monday, I can't recall, about the Saudi oil production cuts. That one garnered a fair amount of interest. And, that's another thing that we've got going on. We still have this geopolitical kind of slow version of the economic warfare playing out, where the Saudis are being courted by the Chinese, and we have the potential end of the petrodollar. But all of that will look like child's play if this turns into a major conflict. Mike O says, I smashed it. I did, but then I got kicked out. I was number one waiting. Sorry if you got kicked out of the live stream YouTube, and I, excuse me, sometimes have some technical issues. I'm not the most tech-savvy individual out there, so sorry if you got kicked out, but just keep trying to join the live streams. This is an interesting headline from oilprice.com. China's monthly crude oil imports surged to third highest on record. So, the IEA, the International Energy Agency, they are forecasting higher oil prices throughout 2023 due to constricted supply, due to these Saudi and OPEC cuts, and also increased demand. Most of that demand coming out of the Middle East and China. China really contributing to most of the forecast for increased petroleum demand. And, there had been some indications perhaps that China's reopening was going to be slower than previously expected. But now, looking at headlines like this, and kind of makes you realize that that may not be the case. And if we do see surging crude oil prices due to increased demand from places like China and the Middle East, then we are very likely going to see a major resurgence of inflation. Now, if that happens, sorry, I'm moving the camera around here. If that does happen, then very likely you're going to see this stuff get bid up in a very big way. I think at the moment, investors still kind of buy the disinflation narrative that the Fed has been spitting for the past couple of months. But I think if we see a resurgence in the price of crude oil, which I believe is coming, of course anything can happen, but it seems like that's the direction we're headed in. Then I think that that's going to have a massive knock-on effect to the price of gold and silver. Now, one thing that is fun about these live streams is we can kind of just cover a lot of developments. This was another headline that I thought was pretty interesting here. More Canadians missing payments as they sink deeper into debt. I believe Canada now has about $100 billion in credit card debt. Of course, here in the U.S., this is the Federal Reserve of New York's Center for Microeconomic Data Household Debt and Credit Report, which revealed just recently that the U.S. now has close to $1 trillion in credit card debt. And this is a problem that really is pervasive and kind of plagues the West, this huge debt problem. And we just saw the Congress suspend the debt ceiling, the national debt. We've got consumer debt, we've got student debt, all sorts of debt, corporate debt. All of this stuff is completely out of control. Inflation is still remaining very high. The latest CPI data, 4.9% for April. We'll be getting the May data soon, so that'll be very interesting to see. I'm sure I'll cover that in a future video. But, the Fed is not going to be done with their rate hikes unless they are forced to capitulate and pause and pivot due to the deteriorating economic situation here in the U.S. And a lot of that has to do with all of this massive leverage, this massive indebtedness that we have taken on. And, it really can't be said enough that the problem here is not, a debt ceiling or rising interest rates. The real problem here is rates, they're not that high. From a historical standpoint, they're not that high. The pace of rate hikes, I suppose, has been somewhat high, but they were coming from a very low level. The problem here is all the debt. We got $32 trillion almost now in the national debt. We're going to surpass that level very soon, probably taking out $33 trillion before the end of the year, the way things are going. And this is just a completely unsustainable thing. And very soon, I think, even absent a devolution into full-blown World War III, we are going to see further economic crisis here in the U.S. And, all of these things are an indication that you want to be getting into hard assets. I'm not saying put all your eggs in one basket, but look, if you don't have any hard assets, now none of this is financial advice. I'm just kind of giving you my point of view on things. But if you don't have any hard assets right now, you don't have any tangible wealth that you can hold in your hand, you are setting yourself up for your own personal financial crisis, your own personal economic meltdown. Liquid Electrum CC just did a super chat for $4.99, just a thanks, bro. Well, yeah, you're welcome, man. I appreciate you supporting the channel and joining this live stream. If you want to support the channel, one of the best things you can do is smash that like button. Tell your friends, spread the word, because you'll be doing them a favor. A lot of folks still not getting into hard assets. I think there was a poll I saw. This is a poll from a couple of years ago, but I'm sure the numbers haven't changed too much. I think it said something like 14% of Americans have physical gold or silver in their possession. And that poll, I believe, you would have answered positively to that poll if you had, say, like a gold ring or some silver jewelry or something. So how many people are stacking any amount of serious weight in gold or silver? It's very few. So if you want to be in the minority of those who are set up to thrive after an economic crisis, make sure that you could answer affirmatively if that poll was given today. It's probably more folks today have some bullion. If you recall in March, when the banking crisis started with SVB and, the kicking off of a larger banking crisis than occurred in 2008, which we are still in the midst of. We're only halfway through the year, not even quite halfway through the year. And, this banking crisis already exceeds 2008. People, I think, sometimes get impatient for moves to occur, and it's kind of like this punctuated equilibrium kind of thing where things move along very normally for a period of time, and then you get these big developments. And it requires some discipline and commitment to continue doing something like stacking or saving or getting prepared. But I'm confident that at the end of the day, when we do get a real crisis, which is coming. I mean, make no doubt about it. You look at the numbers, you look at the amount of debt out there, you look at this geopolitical situation, and if you think that everything's just going to be fine, I can only attribute that to, normalcy bias and the idea that, well, the dollar's always been the reserve currency. Stock market's always gone up. Dollar's always reserved its purchasing power in my lifetime, so it always will, which is logically, fallacious. This story, the next one, U.S. urged to reveal UFO evidence after claim that it has intact alien vehicles. 2023 is certainly getting weirder and weirder. This guy, David Grush, he was a analyst for UAP, Unexplained Anomalous Phenomenon, with the U.S. Department of Defense Agency. I believe he is a combat veteran from Afghanistan. And, the Pentagon now claiming that this is false, that they don't have alien aircraft and alien bodies. But, this guy is not like a tinfoil hat wearing crazy person. He, by all accounts, from what I've read of the guy, is very reliable source. And he's saying that, we got UFOs. Now, not that this is a UFO channel or anything. I don't want to get too weird with anything like that. I'll go ahead and get that headline off the screen. But this, it just indicates it didn't get much media attention. Everybody's still talking about Bud Light. Sure, talk about Ukraine. That at least is getting reported in the news. Although here in the U.S. and in the West, it's largely more propaganda pieces. Oh, Russia blew up this dam. And again, I'm trying to remain objective here and not take sides. But if you look at the key bono of who benefits from this dam getting blown up, Ukraine kind of disproportionately benefits. It does cut off the water supply to Crimea, which is Russian-held territory. It cuts off the ability for them to irrigate land there, grow food, could kick off a famine in this Russian-controlled area. Also, a big deal because the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant gets its cooling water for its spent fuel rods from this dam. So, this could kick off a major nuclear disaster. According to the mainstream media, Russia has done this to themselves. I don't know. I don't think we will ever know the truth about that, or at least it won't be anytime soon. But the point is, they're just completely disregarding some of these seemingly fairly significant stories. Like you have insiders claiming that the U.S. has spacecraft and they've been, reverse engineering them to have weapons. But it just tells you, the purpose of the media is not to keep you informed, it's to control your opinion. And that's why when they tell you everything is fine in the economy and that, de-dollarization is nothing to worry about, you might want to take that as a contraindication that you might want to be getting into hard assets. And, it's not just gold and silver. It's not like that's the only thing you need to be doing to get prepared. Probably one of the most important things you can do is learn some skills, focus on your physical health, get some food and some emergency supplies, just broadly become more prepared, get a bug out plan. This isn't a prepping channel, although I do kind of consider myself a prepper stacker as far as my stacking philosophy goes. The reason that I stack, it's not because I'm a collector. I don't really collect anything. I don't have baseball cards, I don't have bottle caps. I have hard assets, I have gold and silver, and I don't collect them because they're cool, although, they are cool. Like, I like silver dollars. They're awesome. But the real reason to have this stuff is not because you like to collect stuff. It's because a time is coming when dollars might not buy you very much, Alan Greenspan even, the former chairman of the Federal Reserve, he admitted as much in congressional testimony, when he said the current system that we have of entitlements in this country is just something that moves cash around, and that very likely we will be able to guarantee cash benefits for all of these programs, but we won't be able to guarantee their purchasing power. So, when you have someone like Alan Greenspan telling you that that's the case, you probably should pay attention. And that was years ago, over a decade ago, that he was forecasting that. And one of the things that I see pushback on when I say, stack some gold and silver, people say, well, gold and silver stackers, you've been spitting the same story for years and years. Well, listen, the problems have been evident for years and years. That's the thing. It's not like any of this is really new to us. It's just that the problems continue to get worse and worse. I mean, just look at this. The national debt clock, $31.8 trillion. What do we owe in unfunded liabilities? The government's on the hook for $188 trillion. When you break it down, you do the math. I think I did this in a recent video. It's something like north of $2 million per tax-paying U.S. household that the government has promised in payments. I mean, it's insane, right? Like, there is no way that this system is sustainable. Now, whether it will be 10 years from now that the dollar loses its world reserve status and, loses all of its purchasing power, or whether it be next year, or whether it be next month when a ship goes down in the Strait of Taiwan and China dumps $865 billion worth of U.S. treasuries, who knows, right? There's no way to know how long this system can hold together. But it doesn't take a genius when you look at numbers like this to understand that day is coming. And when it comes to getting prepared, for one thing, getting prepared is not something you're going to do overnight, right? What are you going to do? You're going to go out and buy all your gold and silver in one shot when you're waiting for just the perfect moment, the big pullback? I mean, this is nonsense. The idea that, well, I'm just going to wait for silver to pull back and then I'll buy into it. Well, I mean, you may just get caught never getting your hands on it. I think dollar cost averaging, being prepared makes a lot more sense, because here's the thing. There's no way to know when this thing is going to fall apart. Absolutely no way to know. We've got some folks in the chat talking about safety deposit boxes. Listen, safety deposit boxes, they're one of these polarizing things in the stacking community. I've used them in the past. You'd probably be better off looking at some alternative means of storage for your precious metals. There's private companies like Brinks that can warehouse stuff for you, companies that have been in operation for more than 100 years. And as far as I know, they've never really lost anything. It's all insured. Safe deposit boxes are not insured. Safe deposit boxes, if we get a bank holiday or something, well, listen, you might lose your precious metals that are in there. Maybe if you need to use them temporarily for something, like while you're, moving some stuff around, that'd probably be fine. But for long-term solutions, probably a bank deposit box, not the best option. Now, listen, if you want to keep some metal in there, it's not necessarily the worst idea if it's easily accessible to you or something. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, so maybe that's fine, but I wouldn't count on that. Hey, listen, if you want a really interesting way to get some storage for your precious metals, check out the link I have in the description to Alpine Gold Exchange. It is an affiliate link, just a full disclosure. And if you click it, you will be supporting the channel at no extra additional cost to yourself if you end up buying some goldbacks. But you can buy goldbacks from Alpine Gold Exchange, and they will warehouse them for you at no cost. And you can take physical delivery whenever you want. And, this isn't something I've actually taken advantage of yet myself, although I am thinking about it because I do have some powder that is dry, and I'd like to kind of allocate. See you later, Constitutional Stacker. Hope you get back in before we wrap it up. Sorry your internet is less reliable than Joe Biden, in your words. That's a pretty good description. But you can get a goldback lease through the UPMA. I think that's the United Precious Metals Association. So they're affiliated with Alpine Gold Exchange. If you go to Alpine Gold Exchange with the link in the description, you click the login or sign up button at the top. You can create an account there, and you can go to the UPMA and you can deposit cash, turn it into goldbacks, and they will actually pay you interest on those goldbacks. I think it starts off at 2%. But the cool thing about that is that the interest is actually paid in goldbacks. It's not like you put your goldbacks in the account and you get some fiat currency in exchange, and it goes up to 3.5% if you do a fairly large amount of goldbacks. I mean, it's all relative, right? I'm sure some folks here watching, have a lot of disposable income to put into precious metals, or some are more humble like myself. But you can actually get paid passive income in gold, and they will store your goldbacks for you at no cost. So it's, instead of paying for storage, it's like you get paid to leave them your gold in their hands. And the Jeremy Corden, the Goldback CEO, kind of explained this in an interview I did with him. You can check that video out. You can find that easily on the channel. But the idea is that, they have all these different forms of goldbacks. So they've got the different states, the different denominations. And sometimes it can be difficult for them to keep them all in stock. And so when you have a goldback denominated account and you get a lease, there is a 1-year commitment, I think. So it's kind of like a CD in that sense. You got to keep your funds there for a certain period of time. But it helps them out because they get access to these goldbacks, and it helps just keep all of the different varieties in stock. Something to do with that. So anyway, if you're looking for some allocated storage or something, that's definitely worth checking out. But also, I mean, there's plenty of folks who do. Yeah, SD Bullion has a storage option as well. Check them out with the link in the description. They will store your metal for you. There's lots of places where you can do forms of allocated storage. And, it's probably not a bad idea if you got a lot of metals. Sure, you can keep some in your own custody. I mean, that's not a bad idea. I think it's probably wise to have some, but when you start hitting a certain level, you probably don't want to have all of that metal in your custody. And again, don't put all your eggs in one basket, just in case. So, that's just something I saw popping up in the chat. But listen, today is the time to get prepared. I don't know how much more clear that can become when you look at the news stories that we're covering today, and that just seem to be developing day after day after day. It's time to get prepared, folks. If you've been thinking about getting some hard assets, we have had a little bit of a pullback in the price of gold and silver. Again, gold down to 1950. I'm trying to find my SD Bullion tab just so we can look at the price here. And look at the price of silver. It was what, like $26 not too long ago. So now this is a good opportunity to, make that first purchase. They've got 90% silver at SD Bullion. I think it's about $24-25 face value. They've got that back in stock. This stuff always dries up first when there's a crisis. If we see a nuke detonate, or a economic crisis, or something happen in the Taiwan Strait, you're not going to be able to get this stuff. So, you want to get some now. Now, listen, I'm not trying to be opportunistic. I'd prefer that the world not devolve into a massive crisis. I'd prefer if the shizzy didn't hit the fizzy. But, you can't ignore reality, right? I mean, I don't have any say in whether or not the military-industrial complex encourages the U.S. military to get involved in a massive conflict, right? I don't have any say in that. I'm just a little guy. But what I can do is I can do something to prepare myself for a crisis, which to me at this point appears to be inevitable. What form will it take? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be a big war or an economic crisis. It's probably going to be all of it. I mean, if you're a student of fourth turning generational theory, Strauss and Howe, that book, The Fourth Turning, their forecast, which, up until this point has been kind of unnervingly accurate. They say that 2026 is the culmination of the fourth turning that we find ourselves in. So, between now and then, certainly a lot can happen. That's 3 years off. Think about what was happening 3 years ago, or go back 4 years, go back to 2019. If somebody told you that Ukraine or Russia would be detonating or blowing up dams, if somebody told you in 2019 that the Nord Stream pipeline would be blown up, um, what would you have thought in 2019? If somebody told you that that was going to happen, you'd think, well, okay, the world's going to be ending by by the time that happens. But here we are, things moving right along. We've got UFOs apparently in the custody of the U.S. government. We have got World War III playing out in Asia and in Eastern Europe, and we have got the solution from our leaders is to borrow more money. That's the solution. That's the what was the name of the bill? Put it in the chat if you know it. The recent bill that was signed to suspend the debt ceiling, the Economic Responsibility Act or something like that. You can't make this stuff up. It's like we're living in clown world. Uh, so that's pretty much all I got for you today, folks. But get prepared, because times are probably going to get tough, and hopefully they don't. Worst case scenario, everything goes back to quote unquote normal. Everything chugs along. We keep getting to go buy Big Macs and big screen TVs and, rack up massive amounts of credit card debt and buy McMansion houses and, all that stuff. But worst case scenario, if that's the way things play out, you'll have some nice generational wealth to leave to your kids. But if things play out the way that I anticipate they will, this sort of thing could really, one, it could come in incredibly handy if the dollar, plummets in purchasing power just to, be able to buy some groceries. But also, if you position yourself accordingly, learn the skills, get the assets, get the things you need to prepare, you could put yourself in a position to really take advantage of some opportunities that present themselves. And I don't know what those are going to be. I don't know where the opportunities will be, what the next asset that will be undervalued will be in this, Fed-driven kind of joke of an economy. But listen, right now, I can tell you that silver, probably the most undervalued asset in the world. I mean, you look at what it is, it's a store of value that hasn't failed for thousands of years. There's all these industrial uses for this stuff that continue to be discovered. It's going to continue to be an incredible demand. It's so cheap right now that there's just not going to be enough of it to go around because the incentive to pull it out of the ground isn't there. Last year we had a huge silver deficit. Something like 200 billion ounces, I think, were consumed in excess of the supply, both from mining and recycling. And in order to correct that, the price is going to have to go up. But we've seen what happens with the precious metals when crises play out. Look at what happened in March. SD bullion, $500 minimum order, weeks backlog. I mean, all the online dealers backlogged tremendously. Silver Eagle coins, they're going for like $40 while the spot price is $25. And we haven't seen nothing yet when it comes to crisis. So there is going to be a tremendous demand for this stuff. Right now, it's still very cheap. And I'm just going to keep stacking. I think that's the best thing we can do. Keep stacking, keep prepping. Keep your nose to the grindstone, work hard, learn skills. And if nothing bad happens, if everything goes back to normal, which I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, you're going to be better off for it. You think you're going to say, oh, I'm sad I got my hands on some hard assets, or oh, I really am upset that I learned some new skills, or oh, I'm really disappointed that, I got in better physical shape or physical condition. I wish I hadn't done that. No, of course not. You're going to be glad you did. And should things go south, you're going to be really glad you did. So anyway, again, that's pretty much all I got for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Love doing these live streams. Love interacting with everybody on the chat. Stay safe out there, everybody, and I will catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.